Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Yeshi Chansom. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Tuesday, the 12th of April. India-US discuss Ukraine war, Afghanistan, Indo-Pacific challenges at 2+2 dialogue. Pakistanis pin hopes on new Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif want inflation brought down. And Sri Lanka unilaterally suspends external debt payments, says needs money for essentials. And now for all the details. India and the United States reaffirmed their commitment to promote regional stability and rule of law at the 4th 2+2 Ministerial Dialogue held in Washington on Monday. Several issues including the ongoing war in Ukraine, the situation in Afghanistan, challenges pertaining to the Indo-Pacific region and a range of key bilateral issues were discussed. Talks in Washington took place between U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and their Indian counterparts S. Jaishankar and Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. India and the United States discuss a broad range of issues from the COVID-19 response, climate action to global and regional issues, the ongoing war in Ukraine, the situation in Afghanistan, challenges pertaining to the Indo-Pacific region and a range of key bilateral issues. Delivering his statement after the conclusion of the 4th India-US 2+2 Ministerial Dialogue on Monday between Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in Washington, India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar said, "A good part of my meeting with Secretary Blinken in the morning went to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine that has many ramifications." When asked about India's position on the Russia-Ukraine war and India's energy purchases from Russia, Jaishankar said the focus should be on Europe, not India. Several countries, including the United States, have slapped multiple sanctions on Russia over waging war in Ukraine.
If you are looking at energy purchases from Russia, I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe, which probably we do buy some energy which is necessary for our energy security. But I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon. So you might want to think about it.
Blinken said India's ties with Russia developed over decades at a time when the United States was not able to be a partner to India, but that times had since changed. Defense Secretary Austin said the two countries had signed a bilateral agreement to support sharing information and cooperation in space. U.S. President Joe Biden and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi earlier held virtual talks focused mainly on Ukraine, and Modi said he had suggested to Russia that President Vladimir Putin hold direct talks with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. The talks took place as the United States seeks more help from India in applying economic pressure on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Both expressed growing alarm at the destruction inside Ukraine, particularly in Bucha, where many civilians have been killed. Indian Army and paramilitary rescuers with helicopters lifted to safety on Tuesday, the last of at least 50 passengers who had been trapped mid-air since a fatal cable car collision 2 days ago. The cars on the Pilgrim cableway in Deoghar district of eastern Jharkhand state collided when one of them became partly dislodged from its cable. Neither car fell to the ground, but both became immobilized. The collision directly killed one person and another fell to his death on Monday when trying to climb onto a rescue helicopter. The cableway takes pilgrims to the top of a hill called Trikut, which Hindus consider holy. The survivors were undergoing treatment in hospital. The Jharkhand High Court has ordered an inquiry into the incident.
जो है डिटेल ये विषय है विवेचना का, और उसमें लगभग वो एयरक्राफ्ट तक पहुंच गए थे, उसके ऊपर चढ़ते हुए शायद वो थोड़ा पैनिक कर गए, या क्योंकि एक जो ट्रैप्ड सिविलियन है वो भी 48 घंटे से 36 घंटे से बिना पानी के बिना खाने के है, तो इस स्थिति में थोड़ा रहता है.
In news from Pakistan, Pakistanis have said they are hopeful of the country's new Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and have pinned hopes that he will control rising inflation, which ousted Premier Imran Khan could not do. After winning a parliamentary vote on Monday, Sharif said that the outgoing government had mismanaged the economy and he faces a huge challenge to bring it back on track.
Pakistanis said on Tuesday they were hopeful of the country's new Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif in controlling the rising inflation amid the ongoing economic crisis. Sharif was sworn in as the country's Prime Minister on Monday at the President House, officially taking over from ousted Premier Imran Khan. After winning a parliamentary vote, he said the outgoing government of Imran Khan had mismanaged the economy and the new government was facing a huge challenge to bring it back on track.
अभी शहबाज शरीफ से हमको ये उम्मीद है कि इंशाअल्लाह ताला आने वाले वक्त में ये बेहतरी लाएगा और महंगाई पे काबू पाएगा क्योंकि इन्होंने इनकी पहले भी हुकूमत रही है ना तो तरक्याती काम बहुत ज़्यादा हुए हैं इनके दौर में.
Prime Minister of neighboring India Narendra Modi, along with other world leaders, congratulated Sharif on assuming the office. The White House said a democratic Pakistan is critical to US interests and it supports the peaceful upholding of constitutional democratic principles.
So we support the peaceful upholding of constitutional and democratic principles. We don't support one political party over another, and we certainly support the principles of rule of law and equal justice under the law. We value our longstanding cooperation with Pakistan, have always viewed a prosperous and democratic Pakistan as critical to U.S. interests. That remains unchanged, regardless of who leadership is.
The remarks came as Imran Khan earlier blamed the United States of conspiring to oust him, a charge Washington denies. Sharif said he will probe into the allegation and will resign if it is proved. No elected Prime Minister has completed a full term in Pakistan since its formation in 1947, though Imran Khan is the first to be removed by a no-confidence vote.
Moving on to news from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's central bank said on Tuesday it had become challenging and impossible to repay external debt as it tries to use its dwindling foreign exchange reserves to import essentials like fuel. The island nation of 22 million people is running short of power, fuel, food and medicines due to a lack of foreign exchange for imports. It has reached out to the International Monetary Fund and countries such as China and India for urgent financial help.
Sri Lanka will temporarily suspend foreign debt payments to avoid a hard default, the central bank governor P. Nandalal Veerasinghe said on Tuesday, with its limited foreign reserves required for imports of essential items such as fuel. The suspension of payment would be until the country came to an agreement with creditors and with the support of a loan program with the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Sri Lanka starts formal talks with the global lender on Monday for emergency loans. The island nation's reserves have slumped more than two-thirds in the past 2 years as tax cuts and the COVID-19 pandemic badly hurt its tourism-dependent economy and exposed the government's debt-fueled spending. Street protests against shortages of fuel, power, food and medicines have gone on for more than a month. Sri Lankan demonstrators have also intensified their protests calling for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to step down amid a deepening economic crisis afflicting their country. As protests continue, Sri Lanka's Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa in a televised address on Monday said the country had reached a decisive juncture and called for patience. Rajapaksa said that the government, which is led by his younger brother Gotabaya, will bring back a fertilizer subsidy for farmers who were badly hit by a ban on the product last year that was later rolled back. Meanwhile, the three political parties that recently withdrew from Sri Lanka's ruling coalition have proposed forming an interim government with a new Prime Minister replacing Mahinda Rajapaksa, they said on Monday.
In news from Nepal, 48-year-old Nepali female climber Lhakpa Sherpa is all set to begin her climbing activities in Mount Everest region, aiming to scale the world's highest peak for the 10th time this season. Aiming to break her own record of the highest ascents of the Mount Everest, Nepali female climber Lhakpa Sherpa will attempt to scale the world's highest peak for the 10th time this season. The 48-year-old mother of three who works as a housekeeper in the US was bid farewell for the summit in a special ceremony in Nepal's capital Kathmandu on Monday. Lhakpa will first start off by scaling the Everest base camp this weekend and would attempt the summit from the south side, which is considered to be full of difficulties.
अनि म चाहिँ एकदम ओल्ड स्टलले पहिले एल्मो हिरेरी तेन्जिन शेर्पा कसरी गएको छ म यहाँबाट सालारी जान्छु सालारीबाट हाम्रो यो डकुमेन्टरीहरु पनि मसँगै जान्छु सालारीबाट चाहिँ म एकदम ओल्ड स्टल फलो गर्छु अहिले म किनभने नयाँ डिजाइन त यङ जेनेरेसनले गरिहाल्छ अनि आई विल म टिचिङ एकदम ओल्ड सिस्टम अनि अहिले चाहिँ यङ जेनेरेसनले चाहिँ ओल्ड सिस्टम बिर्सिएको रहेछ हैन अलिकति बिर्सिएको जस्तो लाग्यो मलाई.
The Guinness Book of World Record holder for most ascents by a woman, Lhakpa Sherpa, also made through the list of BBC's 100 Women of the Year in 2016. She had also scaled the Everest 8 months after the birth of her first daughter and while she was 2 months pregnant with a second child. Hundreds of climbers flock each year to Nepal to scale Himalayan peaks during the spring season that begins around March and ends in June. A total of 204 climbers from 42 countries have acquired the permission to scale the Mount Everest this season, reports suggest. Afghanistan's ruling Taliban this month announced a ban on harvesting poppies and warned farmers that their crops will be burnt and that they can be jailed if they proceed with the harvest. In the Taliban heartland of southern Kandahar, beekeeping is now becoming more popular as an alternative income-generating activity.
The beekeeping and honey production industry in Afghanistan's southern province of Kandahar, known for poppy cultivation, has been expanding after long years of insecurity and heavy fighting. Now, it has become an important source of income for locals. Farmer Abdul Bari said that beekeeping has been profitable business. In addition to honey, bees also produce wax, pollen and venom, which all have their own value in international markets.
د مچۍ ډیر شکار نو په ټولو کې د کندهار د ریحانو اصل اول اصل سو په اول قدم کې د کندهار د ریحانو اصل یا شاچې چې هغه 100% شاچ.
Muhammad Yaqub, another Kandahar beekeeper, said Afghan honey is also sold in other countries. It is believed that beekeeping could prove more lucrative than growing opium poppies. And with the Taliban Supreme Leader Hebatullah Akhundzada banning the cultivation of opium poppy and a trade of opium in Afghanistan, a move that came nearly more than 7 months after the Taliban's takeover of the country, many farmers are looking at beekeeping as a key to replacement. However, farmers say that the government must find alternative livelihoods for them before banning poppy cultivation. Beekeeper Yaqub called on the government to provide more opportunities for the development of the honey industry, saying every Afghan farmer must find good ways to cultivate legitimate crops.
Tourist influx has increased in Leh city of India's Himalayan desert region of Ladakh with the easing of most COVID-19 restrictions. Tourism is the mainstay of the economy of the region and now local businesses are gradually coming back on track.
Scores of tourists from across the country are thronging Leh city in India's Himalayan desert region of Ladakh after the easing of most COVID-19 restrictions. Ladakh's geoclimatic conditions, landscape, Buddhist monasteries and shrines, along with local vibrant festivals, are popular in cultural tourism. Tourists, both domestic and international, admire and are attracted by authentic traditional items with historic value.
लेह में सब कुछ खूबसूरत है या लोग अच्छे ऑनेस्ट लोग हैं प्यार करने वाले लोग हैं यहाँ का लोकल खाना बहुत बढ़िया खाना है और यहाँ की वादियाँ यहाँ के पहाड़ वहाँ यहाँ का पानी सब कुछ तो अच्छा है.
A primary source of income for businesses in Leh Ladakh is generated through tourism and now local businesses are back on track. All major cities have lifted COVID containment measures across India amid a drop in infections. India's active caseload of COVID-19 stood at 10,889 as of Tuesday.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/AsAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @AsAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time tomorrow. Good night.